Hey, folks, it's the Poor Sports Seattle podcast, and I just want to make sure. Good, thank God I'm recording. The app that I use, StreamYard, this is a good way to start the podcast. To retain listeners is to complain about the app that I'm using, but it now says live instead of recording in the top left corner, and it's jarring every single time. Big Mariners news, big Seahawks draft implications. There's really nothing's changed. We're just going to go through another mock draft simulation, but I wanted to talk this week. I did not. Normally, I would do this on Monday, but loyal listeners will know that. However, I was on vacation. I went to Ocean Shores with my family, which, by the way, not recommending Ocean Shores in April. It's got some virtues, but I think that it's some of the good or some of the bad outweighs the good, which is there's nobody there, which I love. You love a remote, nobody's there vacation. You love to be the one person propping up the economy of a vacation town. That's exciting. It's fun, but you also you go there for the ocean, and you get this rainy, disgusting version of the ocean. By the way, this is not recorded. This is not live. This is pre-recorded. Which thank you for. Let's actually, in fact, let me put a little banner on there. I will say, big upcoming shows on Friday. This is just added. This is tomorrow, Friday. I will be opening for Whitney Cummings in Spokane at the Bing Crosby Theater. Whitney Cummings, there's a handful of comedians, like top 10 comedians I would have ever wanted to work with. And I'll be honest with you, I've gotten to work with a lot of those comics, which is pretty cool. Whitney Cummings was on that list, and I had not gotten to work with her. I had the opportunity. I got submitted to work with her a couple of years ago, and she picked someone else. So this time around, I got selected. By the way, I don't know how many people got submitted. I know last time it was like 10 comics. And then on Sunday, I will be in Portland, Oregon, at Helium Comedy Club with Gabe Rutledge. We have an early show, which is another thing I'm excited about, like a 4 o'clock show, and also like a 7:30 p.m. show, whatever. And then 2 weeks from now, I will be at Helium Portland in the small room, opening for my buddy Ron Hirschberg. So I'm officially a Portland comic now. I went multiple years without ever gracing the stage. Almost 10 years of doing comedy without ever stepping foot into Helium, barely ever performing comedy in Portland proper. There's a lot of comics in Portland. There's a lot of very funny comics in Portland. There's a lot of funny white bearded comics in Portland. I don't check any boxes. I don't fill any holes. I'm not exciting for any booker. I don't appease any local population. So I think I maybe have done 2 shows ever in Portland proper before 2025. And I'm giving myself one as a buffer because I frankly don't know if I know I did two. Yeah, that's right. I did Al's Den, which is a cool little venue in Portland. And I also did a venue called Kelly's Olympian that I headlined for my sister. As my sister got married in Southern Washington, and we found this venue that would allow me to basically do a private comedy show for the entire wedding party, which was like, I don't know. What do you call it? It wasn't a wedding, but it was it was a semi-destination wedding. I know Portland's not like an exciting destination from Seattle. There's a lot of stuff behind it, but we had like a 3 or 4 day experience down there, and everyone that was there for that, which was like 35 or 40 people, got to go to this comedy show for free. By the way, one of the few shows of my life I haven't recorded, and man, crazy environment. I should have recorded it. I'm like roasting my sister on stage. And yeah, just a rare miss where I did not record. So come out to that, please. Yeah, Ron Hirschberg at Portland Helium, and then come see me at Bickerson's Brewhouse in Renton, and come see me at Beat Drop Event Center and Kitchen or something like that. Really cool space in Lacey, Washington. And then we'll see. I also, by the way, it's announced, it's official. I am going to be on the Great Outdoors Comedy Festival in Spokane again. Last year I did it, opening for Tom Segura. Over 5,000 people in attendance at the Spokane One Arena, which is the largest crowd I've ever performed for. This year, I'm there on a Saturday. I'm opening for Bert Kreischer. My suspicion is I will top that 5,000 attendees. So come on out to that, by the way. That's going to be a killer event. Fortune Feimster is opening. I've seen Fortune Feimster. I've seen her a couple times. One time in Colorado. One time, a couple times, I think, at Tacoma Comedy Club. Really funny comic. And then this dude that I guess maybe I'm underestimating the level of like name he is, because I saw him featuring for, I was out doing a run of shows in Spokane, just like bar shows. And the owner of Spokane Comedy Club texted me. He was like, hey man, if you can get into Spokane Comedy Club, the feature is killer and completely clean. His name's Derek Stroop. So funny. So anyway, that'll be a fun weekend. Now that that's out of the way, so I'm still loving the Root Sports app, by the way. And that's not to say it doesn't have problems. It's got frustrating elements that I'm on board with. I agree. There are frustrating things about the Root Sports app, the streaming app for the Seattle Mariners. But it's such a better experience than what I was doing before, which is using MLB TV, using a VPN, having to kind of have this like, is it going to work tonight? Is it not going to work tonight? If I'm, out at a comedy club, do I have the combined bandwidth to reach a satellite that says I'm in Canada and then broadcast a game? It was just a huge pain in the ass. And it felt like, it's also like borderline. It's like, it's, what do you call that? Like, not edgy. It's borderline unethical. It's the ethics are muddy, I would say. None of this is the word that I was actually looking for. I'm very tired, by the way. You go on vacation with kids, brought my dog, brought my kids. You go on vacation with them and you're like more tired when you come back than you were when you went out. But it was such a fun time to see. It was such a fun time until it was not a fun time. We took our kids bowling. We have a 1-year-old and a 5-year-old, probably pretty well documented on this podcast. 1-year-old lost her mind, could not handle herself. Worst behavior I think we've ever had in public. All while we're trying to have the first bowling experience for the 5-year-old. So, and then not a lot of sleep last night. The anticipation of getting back on the grind. Got about 5 or 6 hours of sleep. So I've complained about being tired a lot on this podcast. It's never going to change. I'm going to be tired forever, probably. That being said, I'm in Ocean Shores at our Airbnb. Really cute Airbnb, but they have TVs that accept AirPlay. So I got to watch, because everything in Ocean Shores closes at like 7 o'clock. There's no reason to be out past that. I got to sit and watch the Mariners and have a beer with my family at this Airbnb, and I got to watch 2 very frustrating Mariners games. And then on the drive home, I got to listen to the Wednesday game that the Mariners came back from being down 4-0, and then they came back from being down 6-4 to win 7-6 in dramatic fashion. The grand slam from Randy Arozarena was very exciting. Were they down? No, I think they were down 5-0 at that point, and they got the insurance run. That's right. I think that's correct. And then the Julio Rodriguez with like just the most professional hitting. I don't want to. I don't really believe in the causal like 1-to-1. Edgar's here now. Julio hits like a professional. I don't believe in that. But what I will say is going the other way, dinking a ball out the other way after starting out 0-2, which for a guy that has the swing and miss rate of Julio Rodriguez, that's oftentimes a death sentence. For him to, it felt a little bit like, remember those stories that they used to say about Brett Boone? Before we were aware of and no longer in denial that Brett Boone was on steroids, but they would tell those stories about him. He was short in his swing and open his stance with 2 strikes. The Brett Boone 2-strike stance. And it felt a little bit like that, where Julio changed his approach a little bit and just laid a line drive out into right field. And that sounds very easy, and it's not like that's the easiest thing in the world to do. But if he can do that on a regular basis, one, he's going to come up with a lot more of these big game these big game situation moments where he feels clutch. I'm an analytics nerd. I ruin baseball for myself and others. I don't believe in clutch. But what I do think is if Julio can have this kind of approach, he could be markedly better with 2 strikes. This like contact first approach with 2 strikes, especially 0-2, by the way, where the pitcher doesn't have a lot of incentive to give you a ball to hit. And then a Rosarena comes up and walks again. By the way, I'll tell you, I spent basically that entire game thinking about how unfortunate it is that Randy Rosarena has to play the field. I think we saw a decent amount of this weekend, like why he's a bad fielder, and it's not because he's super slow or he has a bad arm. There's maybe a little bit of an effort issue, but also just a little bit of just like natural instincts and also maybe some technique flaws that maybe fall back into the effort category. I can't remember who hit the ball, but it was, it was what was his name? Oh, the Astros rookie was it something Smith? Chris Smith, Astros? Anyway, yeah, it can't be. Whatever his name was. Cam Smith? Maybe that was it. Astros. I believe he hit a triple that was like really should have been a double. And it was all on Randy Arozarena's effort. And I was thinking that the whole time. By the way, I still stand by that. And the Mariners have pushed themselves into a corner with Jorge Polanco, who's been great, by the way, who's hit the ball very well since coming back, or since the season started, but who is right now a DH only, and like a DH that can't hit right-handed as a switch hitter. So a very limited role available for Jorge Polanco, which we're going to talk about this in a moment, but like it's going to have to expand pretty soon, I think. The Mariners really gave themselves a very thin margin at every position. You kind of needed like all but 1 or 2 guys to remain pretty healthy. And now they're in this situation where Ryan Bliss tore his bicep, where Victor Robles fractured his shoulder. And now these guys, the flexibility you had, the Donovan Solano, the Jorge Polanco, the Randy Arozarena, the Luke Raley, the Dylan Moore, the Ryan Bliss, these guys who could kind of technically cover most of these positions and also the bench depth. Now you're like, Raley's in the outfield probably full-time, which probably is where he belongs, by the way. But the ideal way you get Raley in the outfield permanently would have been to put Arozarena at DH and have Raley in right field or left field, whichever, and Victor Robles in right or left field. Have each of those guys in a corner. Instead, now it's your Rowdy Tellez is going to play first base as well as he's going to play first base. I actually haven't seen the moves that the Mariners made. Let's see. Mariners transactions. And this also is as they're trying to juggle the roster for the Emerson Hancock demotion and the George Kirby still not being ready, which hopefully that'll resolve itself soon. But so yeah, they got Leo Rivas back up, but I mean these are not guys that are in Dominic Canzone. Those are the two to replace Bliss and Robles. Dominic Canzone is like a DH only or a bad outfielder. Leo Rivas is. Hold on. I just want to confirm that I'm not like missing something crazy on Leo Rivas. Yeah, I mean he's a journeyman quad A, if you even want to call him quad A. Like, is he gonna be a productive big league hitter? Probably not. Is he gonna be a whiz with the glove? Probably not. But he is 27. He is Uh, switch hitter. Like, there's very few virtues about Leo Rivas. He's not exciting in any way. I will say Ryan Bliss brings a level of excitement to the game that I was, in my mind, I was, sentimental with my family, maybe a couple extra drinks deep because I'm on vacation. And I was like, is Ryan Bliss our new Joey Cora? Could he be a cult fan favorite the way Joey Cora was? And Victor Robles obviously has like some elements of that also. And I was just like, could these guys be exciting in that way? And then they both, like, literally, I'm just watching both these guys get hurt. And both, by the way, like, Bliss is out 4 to 5 months. Robles is out 12 weeks plus, so basically 3 months. I think the Mariners need to prepare as though those guys are not coming back this season. 4 to 5 months is basically the whole season. 5 months is, I think would put you into September at this point. And then we don't know how Ryan Bliss responds from injuries. Ryan Bliss, though, was a guy that was making you. I defended the Paul Sewald trade to a degree because I thought there was a chance you take a shot on Dominic Canzone, on Josh Rojas, on Ryan Bliss, at having an everyday big leaguer. And really, Ryan Bliss was the only guy that kind of still showed that promise for the Mariners. The Mariners famously non-tendered Josh Rojas in the offseason. Like I said, Dominic Canzone, I think is like a compelling bat. He's not an everyday outfielder defensively, for sure. And he's like an 82 career WRC plus and 373 plate appearances. It's just not gonna play. So Ryan Bliss was like the guy to actually win the trade. And I will say this: I don't know if you let Paul Sewald finish out his time in Seattle, I don't know that you have anything remaining for him. And to me, getting those 3 shots at a big leaguer at the time seemed more valuable to me than to have the memory of a middle-aged late inning reliever. And Sewald hasn't been crushing since then. So I know that the Mariners have been very close to the playoffs, and there's a decent argument to be made that if they had one extra high leverage reliever, maybe they would have accrued that win and been to the playoffs since then. But I didn't think that was as bad of a process as I think other people did. Outside of the fact that it seemed a little bit aimed at saving money when the Mariners are, the Mariners' money spending issues, we don't need to go over again. But that being said, the Mariners went from a team that had this kind of like Donovan Solano, Dylan Moore, utility guy tandem that could fill all the infield spots and a couple of the outfield spots. And Robles, of course, could cover center field if Julio needed a day off or a day to DH. Down to your like Dylan Moore or Solano are probably your everyday second baseman at this point. Luke Raley's coming out of the first base role and likely going to the outfield. And then you're like, until Polanco is healthy, you got a problem in the infield until now you have to DH Polanco and play Mastroboni at third or Solano at third. And these guys that were supposed to cover multiple positions and be your pinch hitters, your guys that moved around and spelled other players, now they are going to be put into full-time roles at specific positions, probably. And the Mariners don't really have a redundancy plan built in for that. So it's going to be, the deal is, again, they should be preparing as though these guys aren't coming back. And if they aren't coming back, you go make a move right now. I don't know who that guy is, by the way. I was trying to figure out some guys that were, I don't know if you could pry, this would be a later in the season thing, if the Reds fall out of contention, if you could maybe pry Gavin Lux from them. They made a trade for him in the offseason with the Dodgers, and Lux has played second base, shortstop, and a little bit of outfield. Like, maybe that's a guy, and he's left-handed and has some prospect pedigree that maybe hasn't been realized yet. Like, maybe that's the kind of guy, but you got to do something right now. you kind of need to go get someone right now. And there's not free agents available, obviously. I mean, this is going to be, it's going to be tough sledding. And also, you got to be white knuckling if you're the Mariners. And you got these two, you got a 37-year-old Donovan Solano is the difference between you and having to play Mastroboni or Rivas every day. That's a bad spot to be in. And it's a self-inflicted wound. As we've been talking about the whole offseason. So this is an own goal, I mean, of course, these injuries are unfortunate and unlucky, but they're not altogether unexpected. Baseball players are athletes, and athletes get injured. And you couldn't have expected, I said this also, you could not have expected the rotation to be healthy the whole year either. And so they're already, like, with Kirby out, they're already facing some issues with that. So anyway, let's do this mock draft and get out of here because I got to go pick up a child from daycare. And okay. So we're going back to PFF this week. Also, I was going to do a bunch of draft coverage in real time. And I think what I'm going to do is, instead of doing draft coverage in real time as like live streaming during the draft, here's the deal. I make a lot more money doing stand-up than this podcast, so I had to accept these stand-up gigs. I'm trying to get into the Helium system and get booked by them, so I'm just not doing it. That's the reality. I'm not doing it. But I would like to react to the draft picks, and the draft is very exciting for me. So we'll put some content out maybe after the draft. I'll get done with my show on Thursday, be driving home from Portland and react that way, and then on Friday, maybe I'll react in between shows to what the Seahawks have done. And then Saturday, I don't know. My wife is going to be coming down on day 3, hopefully with me to Portland. We're going to be, tying one on a little bit, and we don't need your shit. She doesn't want to be an accidental producer of a sports podcast on the drive down. So yeah, we'll see. Plans change. All right. So here we go. This is the PFF, and I'm gonna start shifting this towards like what I think is a more realistic where the draft will go. So, like, for example, I know the PFF has Tate Ratledge in the 90s on their big board, and you can mess with some of this stuff. You can mess with, I'm just showing you on if you're watching, you can mess with how the computer simulation deals with different things that different philosophies teams may have, or how you want the draft to fall to be the most realistic. I'm going to leave it at the default settings. We're going to do all 7 rounds. I'm going to try to make a good Seahawks draft, but one that's also realistic to what will happen in real life. And I think Tate Ratledge is probably getting drafted in the 2nd round, which I think that's pretty it's pretty accepted at this point. So we will start. I'm trying to get better at, like, once we start this, not spending 14 years. Also, Shedeur Sanders started to come back up. Ooh, a rare Travis Hunter pick at number 2, which will be interesting to see how that affects this. I've been running this Shedeur Sanders going 2nd overall a lot. So he goes to the Jets here, who have Justin Fields. That might be a situation where somebody might trade up to get ahead of the Saints. But I think 7 is a realistic spot, even though I'm out on Shedeur. Fully out on Shedeur. I appreciate everyone that thinks he's going to be very good, because I can't get myself there. And I would not have wanted the Seahawks to draft him. Shamar Stewart's a guy that just went to the Falcons on this draft that I would have been excited for the Seahawks to draft. And now this is a familiar situation. Kenneth Grant's exciting. Emeka Egbuka is exciting. I think the chances the Seahawks draft a receiver is higher than people may want. I like Kelvin Banks. We're not going to do any trades today. I don't know if we're going to be doing any trades, period, on this. I guess next week isn't the week. The week after that, I was going to do a fresh mock draft every day. What I am going to do is put together a list of like guys that I like and the tiers that I have them at where I would be not pissed off if the Seahawks drafted them. Most of them are guys that, like, even if the Seahawks drafted them first overall, even though I don't think that's where their value is, I'd still be stoked because I think they're going to be good players. But where I would be like through the moon happy. And like the top tier is I'd be fine with and happy still if the Seahawks traded up for that player. Down to like undrafted free agent would be where I'd be stoked. Okay. So what did we do last week? Did we take? I think you got to take Kenneth Grant here just because I think he's such a unique body, and everything's so mixed on the reviews and the projections are so mixed on Kenneth Grant. Some people think he's going to go before the Seahawks, and some people have him like into the second round. If he's in the second round, if he's available in the second round, I would like the Seahawks to trade up for him. But I'm not sure if that's. We looked at it a couple weeks ago. Seahawks trade ups have been pretty successful in the John Schneider era. So if they trade up, it probably means it's somebody that they're really committed to. And if that's the case, then that's maybe makes that guy a little more palatable. I like Kenneth Grant either spot. In fact, Kenneth Grant's probably on the border for me of a guy because of the uniqueness of his body and skill set that I'd be okay with the Seahawks trading up for a little bit. So, a guy that I would like to have available at 50 if it happens, Landon Jackson, like super high priority. Savon Ravel, I believe it's Savon and not Chavon. If he's available at 50, that's like a no-brainer pick. But he's starting to move up in these draft rankings, like the consensus or the aggregate of all these ranking systems. By the way, there's a really good podcast episode of the Seahawks Forever podcast. Emery Hunt, whose specialty, man, Landon Jackson and Savon Ravel 2 in a row, just absolutely crushing our draft board here. Emery Hunt was on the Seahawks Forever podcast, and his specialty is small school players. And one thing he talks about is not really paying attention to other big boards and just having his own rankings and not caring where everybody thinks the guy's going to get drafted and then slowly edging his rating down to that spot, which is, to me, exactly how you should do it. And I mean, I'm not going to be grinding tape ever. So I'm never going to be the person to execute that, but like that's the truest. Now you can have your projected draft position be higher, but man, that's tough. He had a Russell Wilson, I think, with a first round grade and like his second quarterback, or maybe third quarterback that year he talked about on that episode, and a couple other. By the way, he had Sam Howell as his second quarterback behind Lamar Jackson the year they got drafted. So that might be promising for Seahawks fans. So Kevin Winston is a guy that. This is like just maybe my ignorance. I think that the profile fits what the Seahawks want to do with that kind of like nickel safety position. And if they can move Devin Witherspoon outside, it's almost like you get a safety and a cornerback because they don't really need a pure safety, but a guy that can play in the nickel and play against both the run and the pass would free up Devin Witherspoon to play outside. I don't know if they want that. I know that there's some fans that want that. I have my doubts about them making that kind of pick here. Jaden Higgins, very interesting. Braden Swinson, my only wonder about Braden Swinson, and I don't see it in this scouting report on PFF, but I think there's some concern about his motor. And my belief is that the Seahawks are going to really care about a guy's motor. I think because we took Grant and I said we're going to get a bad grade on this, I'm going to take Tate Ratledge here, even though, he's actually moved up to 68 here on PFF. So we're going to take Tate Ratledge there. The Seahawks they badly need, this is, by the way, I got criticized a couple weeks ago for Xavier Restrepo. The PFF rankings still have him that high, despite the 4.8 40 or whatever it is. Benjamin Morrison is also interesting. I mean, you just like a couple years ago, you could not. It was hard to find a 6 foot plus corner, and now it's like they just all are 6 foot plus. Man, Darian Porter makes a lot of sense. Also, I don't know if he's going to be. If you draft this is the difference. If you draft Kevin Winston, you're hoping that he's going to be able to play the nickel, and if you draft Darian Porter, you're hoping that he can play outside and keep Devin Witherspoon inside. If you're going to re-sign Devin Witherspoon to a huge cornerback deal, I think you want him playing outside. You don't want him having to go up against offensive linemen and tight ends constantly in the run game. But that being said, he's probably the most valuable there. I guess either way, you're Reek Woolen probably. You could have one more year of Devin Witherspoon playing inside, and then Reek Woolen's probably not going to sign. I don't think the Seahawks are going to sign Reek Woolen to a huge extension, so I'm going to take Darian Porter here. So what are we setting at? We got Kenneth Grant, Tate Ratledge, Darian Porter. So corner is a position that's not incredibly deep. So getting one this early and not having to wait 30 picks to have another shot at it, or not having to trade up, and especially not trade assets out of the 2026 draft would be good. Demetrius Knight goes at 60. He's a guy I would have considered if he fell to 82. He's a guy that I would have considered, by the way, for either of those spots at 50 and 52. Which I think that's like maybe the misconception about the draft period. And let me say one thing because I haven't done regular content like this in a long time. I used to do this kind of thing a lot when I was writing. And what I remembered the other day when I was going through the comments and I was annoyed at somebody commenting is nobody's going to be happy with this. I mean, there's like 9 options for the Seahawks to pick at that spot. And if your guy was available and I didn't take him, suddenly you don't like this draft, which is fine. But what I have to calibrate for myself is like, there's no pick that's going to make everyone happy, and there's no explanation that people are going to listen to enough for me to convince anyone. So, corner drops off quickly. Kevin Winston, by the way, still available. A guy we considered at 50. So far, Tate Ratledge, Darian Porter, Kenneth Grant. Would not mind getting a receiver here. I like Trey Harris as a guy that complements the present receivers, but also I don't know that I think fans might be frustrated with how little the Seahawks care about having a diverse set of skills and body types among their receivers. And by might be frustrated, I mean there was already a goddamn mutiny over the fact that they got another slot in Cooper Kupp to go along with Jackson Smith and Jigba. I like Trey Harris. Elijah Roberts is an interesting guy. The Seahawks don't have an edge yet in this draft, and he's came in here at 295 pounds, a guy that measures well, let's see Elijah Roberts' relative athletic score. 8.36, a guy who 285, 6'3", decent arm length, big hands, which actually does matter a little bit. He's probably not an edge. I think that's going to be a thing that, like, if you test him as a defensive tackle, he's a guy that's kind of a tweener, which for most teams would be a negative. I think for the Seahawks is actually helpful because he can play multiple positions across the line. And especially on different downs, he can move up and down the line. And a guy that, like, you can have out there and completely disguise what he's going to do because he's not always going to rush the passer. He might drop back into coverage. He might fill a gap to stop the run. Is that what I think the Seahawks would do, though? I think that's not a bad option. And I think that I don't think that there's a huge fall off. I mean, we see Kyle Williams would be another. Kyle Williams and Jalen Royals is just going to provide just a slot mutiny as people lose their minds over the fact that the Seahawks and Jalen Noel, guys that have this similar size and profile, too many of the guys. Trey Harris would not cause that mutiny, and Savion Williams would not cause that mutiny. But let's see what's. I'm comfortable seeing what's available at 92 at receiver and drafting Elijah Roberts. Trey Harris goes the next pick. Trey Harris, Ole Miss guy, across from another Ole Miss guy, DK Metcalf in Pittsburgh would be an interesting matchup. Ole Miss is putting out some receivers, by the way. They are sneakily, and probably not that sneakily, but they are, outside of Ohio State, just pumping out pros. Jared Wilson goes 2 picks before the Seahawks' 92nd pick. Is a guy that would have been a guy I would have considered here but I mean, if you draft that guy in the 3rd round, you probably expect him to take over the center role. And I think Mike Jarrell and Olu Oluwatimi, I'm interested in seeing what the Seahawks have in those guys. And I do respect, though I think it's frustrating they didn't end up signing a big name offensive lineman. I do respect something that I do believe is true, that they are committed to the idea that just because these guys had bad years as rookies or didn't come on the scene and dominate as rookies or as young as first-year starters or as relief starters when Connor Williams retired, in Oluwatimi's case, the team has not given up on these guys. They understand the development curve for most of these guys, doesn't usually mean being dominant in year one. And you can't just keep throwing resources at the problem and pushing the old attempts out the door. They just don't have enough resources to do that. So at this spot, did Savion Williams go too? Am I crazy? Oh, no, there he is at 90. He's ranked 99th. I like him. I would wonder if Kyle Williams was still on the board, if the Seahawks would like him as much as I would expect them to. The kind of slot profile would be interesting. Boy. I mean, if I take a slot receiver, the comments are going to go crazy, but I also said earlier I don't give a shit what the comments are. So we're taking Kyle Williams. I like Savion Williams better, but I kind of think the Seahawks, I think that body and profile is just, it's going to be harder to find, and the Browns took Savion Williams at 94. I just don't think that's going to exist on the Seahawks roster as frequently as fans would like, and I understand it's going to be frustrating. It's going to be a change from what we're used to with DK Metcalf, but I think it's the reality. Harold Fannin Jr. goes 101. That's a guy I should have been considering at 92. Tight end. I do think the Seahawks probably need to leave this draft with a tight end. So with the remaining 5 picks, you want to get, hopefully, a quarterback. You'd like to get a tight end. You'd like to get one more offensive lineman. I'm actually agnostic as to where the guy plays on the offensive line. I think you'd like some tackle depth. You'd be okay with some center depth. I don't think the Seahawks should be committed to a specific part of the offensive line. I think just continuing to draft offensive line. You'd like to get a linebacker if you can. And then, is there anything else that's completely? So the needs that PFF has are center and guard. I said earlier, I don't think that's necessarily true. I think it's possible that they have a starting center on the roster. It's also possible they draft a center. I wouldn't rule that out. I would expect whoever they draft, if they draft an offensive lineman in the first round, it'll be a guy who can play tackle. I've said that about 50,000 times. doing this. And I think if they draft a guard later, sorry, if they draft a center later, it'll be a center who can play guard. But we will see. Especially with the guys they have on the roster. I mean, you start to make those guys completely obsolete if you draft a center only. Because that center only means, I think, even in the fourth round when it comes to the center position, you're like, this guy is going to get a chance to start. Boy, oh boy. So Quinn Ewers is still here. The rankings have actually been updated, I think, today. Because 153 is the lowest I've seen Quinn Ewers. One thing I will say as I've started to run through this, I do think Quinn Ewers is getting drafted before pick 172 a lot more often. I've seen projections of him as late as the 6th round. Two things to talk about. One, Jalen Milroe got invited to the NFL draft, which Todd McShay did a really cool, really good video talking about how the NFL is trying not to have Aaron Rodgers situations where he sits at the draft forever. And it's awkward for him and it's awkward for the people in the room, but great for TV. They don't actually want that. So if the NFL, who has a lot more intel than you and I do, thinks that Jalen Milroe is going to get drafted on day one, my lean would be towards Jalen Milroe is going to get drafted on day one. Similarly, Quinn Ewers had every opportunity to transfer and make a shitload of money as a transfer quarterback in NIL. A guy who had a ton of success, who carried the Texas program to the brink of a national championship, would have had, I think, open doors all over the country and chose to enter the draft, which makes me think that somebody told him he has a grade that is higher than a 6th round pick. I would bet that he got told he had a 3rd round grade, and I would not be surprised if he got drafted in the 3rd round. But if I'm the Seahawks here, and for me, Quinn Ewers, I have him I would say my quarterback rankings are like Cam Ward. I just don't know how to put Shedeur. I don't want Shedeur on the Seahawks. So I don't know where to put him. I'm not saying talent-wise he's off the board. I think it's going to be a hassle. So Cam Ward, number 1. And then the next group is like Jackson Dart, Quinn Ewers, and Jalen Milroe, for me, are all like kind of lumped together. And I'd be happy with the Seahawks drafting them as early as the 2nd round. Maybe Dart's a little earlier because I at least think you can't get Dart in the 2nd round. I like Milroe enough. I think what we're realizing is there's going to be probably at least 3, if not 4 quarterbacks drafted in the 1st round. And if that's the case, then who is going to be available to the Seahawks in round 4? All this to say, I'm taking Quinn Ewers because I don't think in real life he's going to be even available here. But if he was, I'd be running to the podium to make this pick. So we're taking Quinn Ewers. It's going to get a bad grade. Again, we're not focused on the grade. We're not focused on the PFF rankings. It's what I would want the Seahawks to do, what I think they would do if the draft fell this way. And we're coming up on, I'll speed this up a little bit just because it's getting into the later picks. So, man, Brashard Smith I really like. Basil Tootin I like. Who's the Donovan Edwards, the Michigan running back? Those are guys that I think are interesting in late rounds. I will be frustrated if the Seahawks take a running back on day 1 or 2. And it's not because I think that Kenneth Walker or Zach Charbonnet or Kenny McIntosh or George Halani are the future at running back. I just think there's enough talent there that you just don't have to make that call. You don't have to make that move this early. Another guy I like a lot that is, I don't even know if I would say probably not going to be here, but a guy who I'm not quite certain would fit exactly what the Seahawks want to do, but Jalen Lane just tested through the roof. Let me make sure let's get his relative athletic score. .68. Ran a 4.34 40. I will say he's 5'9" and a half, 191 pounds, which is small. Those are both small. great 20-yard split, great 10-yard split, 40-inch vertical, 11-foot broad jump. I mean, just every agility and explosiveness drill through the roof. A little bit small, and one misconception I think about Jackson Smith and Jigba and Cooper Kupp is these guys aren't actually small. JSN's short. He's 5'11", which is short for maybe 6 foot. That's short for a receiver, but he's 200 pounds. And Cooper Kupp is 200 plus pounds. So these guys aren't small. Jalen Lane would be a little bit smaller than either of those guys. But the explosiveness is there, and then the question becomes, does Jake Bobo make the roster? Do you need a guy like Jalen Lane if you already have Marquez Valdes-Scantling? I like him enough to take him here for sure, but I would also look at, oh man, I don't know if there's anything. I don't know if there's anything here that's going to compel me to change my mind. Because I've already filled the quarterback. I also, by the way, Tyler Shuck is at 191 according to PFF. Another guy who's like probably not getting out of the third round. After that, I don't really believe in those guys I've talked about. I think by the end of the third round, we will see Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Jalen Milroe, Jackson Dart, Quinn Ewers, and Tyler Shuck all taken. And then a lot of times after the teams that consider drafting a quarterback early, that plan on that guy being a starter someday, there's a bigger gap than you would expect because nobody needs a quarterback that badly. They have needs to fill in. And in the third round and the fourth round, you expect those guys to step in and play meaningful downs that year. Dante Thornton, big, fast guy, good complement to what the Seahawks have if he's an actual fit in their scheme, which is arguably he's not. So I'm taking Jalen Lane, another slot receiver, folks. Another one. Just a team full of slots. It's a slot machine. Get used to that. You're going to see more and more the Seahawks fielding receivers who are between 5'10" and 6'1" and around 200 pounds who are good route runners and explosive in space and can get separation without being 6'5", 225 pounds. Okay. Dante Thornton's still available. I'm not doing that to you folks. I'm not taking a. So Jalen Conyers would be an interesting tight end pick here. He's 6'4", 265, good testing. I think this is actually where he'll go. I don't think he's ranked 212th for the on PFF. I will say if you draft Jackson Dart in the first round, which they're not gonna do, the Seahawks probably won't draft Jackson Dart in the first round, but were they to draft Jackson Dart in the first round, surrounding that dude with Ole Miss guys, that's not a bad idea. Okay. Jalen Conyers it is. We don't need to overcomplicate this. We'll stop looking at tight ends here, and we're not even looking at them. I'll be curious to see how much more or less hate this receives. Please give me your feedback. I will never block anyone for giving feedback, to be clear. I did block a guy from the channel who goes, "Why are you streaming these corny drafts?" Which, by the way, maybe that's true. That might be a fair assessment of what these are. But the reason is because I like doing it. So fuck off. That's my take. Yeah, if you ever disagree with me on a pick, I would never block someone for disagreeing, especially on a sports channel. That'd be crazy. To just have to be agreed with all the time. Please give me your feedback, positive or negative. And you don't have to mince words. All right. What have we picked so far? So we got Darian Porter in the second. There's a couple late round options, Jabbar Muhammad being one of them, guys that I like to play corner. We've only drafted one offensive lineman, so I think there's a decent chance towards the end the Seahawks end up drafting. Where is Clay Webb still there? Clay Webb's interesting. Miles Frazier is interesting. One thing I'll say here is that I say one thing I'll say here a lot, by the way. I've got speech patterns that I notice because I do a bunch of podcast stuff, and which check out my other podcast, the Underseason podcast, which we'll talk about on the next episode that we record, which will end up coming out in a little while. But there's another Underseason podcast out there that's coming after us. So, man, I don't think there's anyone more exciting than Clay Webb. I would like to take someone who I think had a chance to play tackle as a pro, but I think Clay Webb is the most exciting guy there. I don't know if Clay Webb can play center or not. I've set this team up for. I mean, in the 7th round, if you're getting depth, you're thrilled. So I don't feel too bad about it. But man, okay. So last pick. Let's just make sure I know that he's not going to be. I can't draft him, but Isaiah Nair, are you on there? No. Guy that I feel very strongly about the Seahawks making an undrafted free agent at the very worst. And that's just, I mean, a dude that has unlimited upside, tests through the roof. And I'm not a film expert, but like, he's got flaws that a lot of receivers have. Did we get? Yeah, we got Jalen Conyers, the tight end. So, boy, oh boy. I sound like my dad right now, which is not a compliment. Oh, come on. I think we're going Jabbar Muhammad, if he's still available. Yep, Jabbar Muhammad. All right. We're getting a bad grade on this draft because we deviated so far from the PFF rankings, but I am excited to see we can speed this up completely to the end. So Tate Ratledge gets a D. Not surprising because we went kind of around early on him. Darian Porter at 63. I think that's an unfairly low grade, but it might just be because PFF isn't aware what the actual cornerback situation looks like in Seattle. Elijah Roberts, best grade of that and Kenneth Grant. Two guys that are going to be, flexible defensive linemen. I mean, Grant's playing inside all the time, but has a chance to play some pass rush downs as a nose tackle, as like a guy that can both play straight up nose tackle, zero technique, I believe they call it, and also be on the field on third down is valuable. Elijah Roberts, guy who could play all up and down the line, play a little bit of edge, be potentially what they thought. How quickly we forgot. Draymond Jones could be. Kyle Williams gets a C+. The fans, the listeners are going to hate it. I can feel it. Quinn Ewers gets a C. Not altogether surprising. Everybody seems to be lower on Quinn Ewers. I'm enthusiastically pro Quinn Ewers. And I believe he compares favorably to Geno Smith. And I say that as a guy that I don't hate Geno Smith. I'm invigorated by the trade that sent him away. I think what the Seahawks are doing is really exciting to get younger and to accept that they are probably, not going to win a Super Bowl with Geno Smith as their quarterback, whether that's because he's aging and they're a couple years away or because there's better options out there. Especially at the price. Again, at the price. I don't think we had a chance to talk about the Geno extension. With both him and DK, like what it really comes down to, the thing that makes those deals unarguable is it seems like neither of those guys wanted to be here. So it doesn't matter. They had to get what they could get. And I think considering they did pretty well. Jalen Lane gets a B. interesting with the Lane gets it's later in the draft, and maybe he was closer to his ranking in terms of draft picks. The spot he was picked at. Conyers gets an F. That's actually a little surprising to me. I did reach on him a little bit, but surprising to me that I guess maybe PFF also underestimates the tight end need. In Seattle, Clay Webb, B-. Little surprising that it was such a good grade. Jabbar Muhammad, who I reached by like 60 picks on according to the rankings, gets only a C. So a little confusing, but that's the draft for this week. Thank you all for tuning in. Again, please come see me do stand-up comedy. I would love that. Also, I would love that because it puts money into my pocket. Also, listen to my podcast Underseasoned, which is available wherever you get podcasts. Also, video on Spotify and YouTube. Thank you for listening, and I will talk to you on Monday for sure.